You think you, as a daughter-in-law, deserve a break. Think again after a million years, my mother-in-law exclaimed while giving a hefty kick to my stomach. Looking somewhat satisfied, she headed back to the living room after her outburst. I passed out from the shock, but luckily, a bystander who witnessed everything rushed me to the hospital. Tests revealed I was okay, but the fact my mother-in-law kicked me remained unchanged. We vowed to get back at her. My name is Olivia, 32 years old. I live with my husband, Steve, who's my age. Both of us work at a company where Steve's father, my father-in-law, is the CEO. Steve, expected to be the next CEO, is currently rotating through various departments to understand the company better. Steve and I met when he was assigned to the sales department where I work. Being of the same age, I was tasked with showing him the ropes. Honestly, I thought the future CEO's son was just here to observe, nothing serious. But Steve was like, I look forward to your strict guidance, and took an active role in field sales. Many female employees admired his dedication. Before long, Steve was quite the popular guy in sales. Considering he's expected to be the next CEO, has a great personality, and excels at work, it's no surprise. I wasn't interested in these affairs and focused solely on my job. Then, to my surprise, Steve asked me out. Is this a practice run for someone else? I wasn't trying to tease, but that was my genuine response. It's not practice. I genuinely want to date you, Steve said. Realizing he was sincere, I responded, I'm very focused on my job right now. You can find plenty of cute girls. Why me? I really wanted to concentrate on work, but Steve persisted. I'll work harder to make you feel differently about romance. Moved by his determination, we began dating a month later. The condition: when work gets hectic, it comes first. Steve agreed, and our relationship began. After a year, we decided to tie the knot. My parents were over the moon about our engagement. Looks like you've hit the jackpot, huh? They teased. I thought being welcomed with laughter was better than opposition. The real challenge was Steve's parents. Steve's in line to be the next CEO. They might oppose it fiercely. With those farts, we headed to his parents' house. However, to my surprise, Steve's parents were quite welcoming. Especially my father-in-law, who seemed to have done his homework, saying, I trust Steve with Olivia. She's leading the sales department at this age, after all. My mother-in-law added, if he approves, I won't object. Please take good care of Steve, Olivia. With their blessing, our wedding went off without a hitch. 2 years have passed since our wedding. I've continued working after marriage. Steve is close to completing his rounds through all the departments, and will soon be learning the ropes of being a CEO from his father. Both my husband and I were doing well in our jobs when I found out I was pregnant. I immediately shared the news and discussed it with Steve. He was over the moon, exclaiming, awesome, I'm going to be a dad soon. Once Steve's initial excitement settled, we began discussing our plans moving forward. I expressed my desire to continue working even after giving birth. Fortunately, Steve respected my opinions. Then, we contemplated how to break the news to my in-laws. Actually, during our wedding, my mother-in-law, who had accepted our marriage, now harbors resentment towards me, feeling like I took her son away. The scary part is that she doesn't just spew hateful words, she's physically aggressive. Whenever I'm preparing a meal at Steve's parents' home, she sneaks up behind me and kicks my leg. Her kicks are surprisingly strong for someone in her 60s, and I've had bruises that lasted several days from her kicks. I'd already discussed this with Steve, but I was afraid that talking about it with him would enrage her more. That's why Steve never addressed the issue with her. From such experiences, Steve made a suggestion to me. Let's tell my dad about the pregnancy. But, let's keep it a secret from my mom. Olivia, try to avoid going to my folks' place as much as possible. I don't want my mom to notice and harm you in any way. To divert her attention, I'll visit home more often. Seeing me should suffice for her. I thought Steve's plan was a good one. In this way, our strategy concerning our pregnancy and dealing with my mother-in-law was formed. The next day, we shared our plan with my father-in-law. He agreed to go along with our plan. A month after discovering my pregnancy, I was battling severe morning sickness. I had mistakenly believed that I wouldn't experience it, but that turned out not to be the case. There were days I had to take off from work due to ill health. Steve, seeing me in this state, had reduced his visits to his parents' home. I worried that my mother-in-law might complain. And sure enough, she called. "Olivia, I've noticed you haven't been visiting us recently. Is everything okay?" Caught off guard, I responded, "Work has been busy. I'm sorry I haven't been able to visit." Then she retorted, "Olivia, you've always been busy with work. It's not like I want to see you. I just want to know why Steve hasn't been coming over." Sure enough, she was upset that Steve wasn't visiting. "Can you ask Steve to come over? I've been feeling a bit under the weather." Seeing Steve might just lift my spirits, I sighed quietly so she wouldn't hear. While thinking she should let go a bit, I replied, "All right, I'll let Steve know. Just make sure you do. And don't bother coming over yourself, Haga." With that, she ended the call. I relayed the conversation to Steve immediately. "Your mom doesn't seem to have caught on about the pregnancy, but she's upset that you're not visiting. I'm okay on my own. Could you visit her?" Steve hesitated. "Seeing you like this, Olivia, makes me reluctant to leave." Steve did say that, but I still think it would be troublesome if she found out about the pregnancy. I managed to convince Steve, and he agreed to visit his parents' house. A month later, Steve had started visiting his parents regularly. Thanks to that, calls from my mother-in-law had significantly decreased. Whether it's because of the reduced stress from her or not, my morning sickness has greatly improved, and I've been able to go to work every day. However, something happened one day. After returning from his parents, Steve blurted this out. "Hey, in a couple of weeks during the long weekend, the relatives are gathering at my folks' place for a dinner party. My mom is insisting that you come." Steve's family holds these kinds of gatherings a few times a year. The location for the gatherings rotates among relatives' homes. This time, it seems to have been decided that it'll be held at Steve's parents' place. And, inconveniently, the rule is that all the meals must be prepared by the hosting family. Nearly a year ago, when it was held at Steve's parents' home, I started preparing from early morning and somehow managed everything. Back then, my mother-in-law said, "Our daughter-in-law, Olivia, is a great cook. I can just leave it all to her," and didn't help at all. I bet it'll be the same this time. However, the situation is different from last year. Although my baby bump isn't too noticeable yet, I'm undeniably pregnant, and, unfortunately, both Steve and my father-in-law have work that day. Still, I felt it was necessary to attend. "I'll do my best so that your mom doesn't get suspicious." "No, let's skip this one. I'll figure something out with my dad. It's okay. My morning sickness has subsided. We have a long way to go in this pregnancy, so we need to handle situations like this. Who knows what your mom would say if she noticed. Are you sure you're okay?" "Yes, I'm fine. Just leave it to me." And so, I was set to attend the family gathering. On the day of the family gathering, I went to Steve's parents' house early in the morning and started the preparations. As expected, my mother-in-law didn't help at all and was just waiting in the living room for the family to arrive. By noon, the relatives began to arrive. Steve and my father-in-law still weren't back, but the party started. All the dishes I prepared were lined up. My mother-in-law seemed to want to take credit for the tasty dishes, saying things like, "I taught her how to make this. And she asked me to teach her that recipe too," proudly showing off to everyone. "Amy is a great cook. I can understand why she would ask for recipes." The aunts praised my mother-in-law, and she was beaming. Even after serving all the dishes, my job wasn't over. I had to constantly refill drinks and such. There was no time to rest. About 2 hours passed, and it was about time for Steve and my father-in-law to return. I was exhausted, and as I approached a chair in the kitchen to rest for a moment, the very next moment, my mother-in-law came over, swung her leg, and it hit me right in the stomach. "What do you think you're doing, sitting down? A daughter-in-law should always be standing." The force of her kick knocked me off the chair. Despite the pain, all I could think about was the baby. I didn't expect her to call for help, but I asked her anyway, "Could you please call an ambulance?" "What do you need an ambulance for?" "It was just a little kick." "Don't be so dramatic." As expected, that was her response. She then left me in pain and returned to the dinner. What should I do? I felt something was very wrong. What if something happened to the baby? But I couldn't do anything and eventually lost consciousness. When I came to, I was in a hospital. For a moment, I was dazed, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling. Steve noticed I was awake. "Olivia, are you okay? I heard my mom kicked you in the stomach." His words brought everything back to me. "That's right, the baby." I sat up abruptly. "It's okay. The doctor said not to worry." "Really?" "Yay, it's true." My husband supported me as I weakly made my way back to the bed. Wait, how did I get here? It took me a moment to piece things together. I called the ambulance. The one who said this was Emma, Steve's 87-year-old grandmother. I told my mom about your pregnancy. It was my father-in-law who informed me of this. I thought it'd be good to have someone at the dinner party who knew the situation, and I thought Mom would be the best fit. It seems his judgment was spot on. Emma had been subtly keeping an eye on both me and my mother-in-law. Once I regained consciousness and it was clear that the baby was fine, Emma said, "Well, shall we go and get back at that silly woman?" with a hint of mischief in her voice. When we returned to Steve's family home, it appeared that all the relatives had already left. There were a ton of dishes left in the kitchen. Heading to the living room, my mother-in-law was alone, watching TV. The moment she saw me, she hysterically yelled, "What on earth were you thinking, calling an ambulance?" Then, Grandmama, who was behind me, answered. Well, maybe because her dumb mother-in-law kicked her in the stomach with all her might. My mother-in-law's demeanor shifted dramatically upon seeing Emma. "Oh, Emma, you're here. Everyone's gone. I can drive you home." Her desperation for Emma to leave was obvious, but the revenge on my mother-in-law had just begun. "Do you even realize the gravity of what you've done? There's a baby inside Olivia. In essence, you were trying to harm not just Olivia, but the unborn child as well." My mother-in-law looked dumbfounded. "What do you mean by baby, Steve? It's simple. Olivia is pregnant. Why wouldn't you tell me something so important?" I cut off my mother-in-law's question. "I was afraid to tell you, fearing you might harm me or the baby. Yet even without knowing, you still hurt both of us. I will never forgive you." "What's with that tone? It sounds like I've been physically abusing you all the time. Did I say something incorrect? In fact, every time you've hurt me, I've gone to the hospital and have these medical records as proof. There's no escaping the truth." Saying that, I showed her several medical documents. My mother-in-law began to tremble. What? Why would you prepare all this? What do you intend to do with me?" It was Grandmama who responded. "We'll take these records to the police. You'll likely be arrested for assault. Plus, we have the company's lawyer ready to pursue a civil case as well, so be prepared." Despite being 87, Emma's decision-making was impeccable. Actually, Emma used to be the CEO of the company where my father-in-law is currently the CEO. After her husband passed away early, Emma transitioned from a stay-at-home mom to taking over the business and led it to its current success. While Emma is strict in business, she's friendly and kind-hearted outside of work, and she's loved by all family members. This means that getting on Emma's bad side will alienate you from the entire family. My mother-in-law is now undeniably an enemy in Emma's eyes. Precisely because she understands this, she clings to Emma. "Wait, Emma, calling the cops is a bit of an overreaction, don't you think? I merely pointed out Olivia's behavior as a daughter-in-law. If my words aren't heeded, isn't it understandable that things could escalate? Well, wasn't it you who failed as a daughter-in-law? Can you recall a time when you consistently adhered to my advice? Yet, I never laid a hand on you, did I? Resorting to violence is always wrong." Rebuked sharply, my mother-in-law could only remain silent. The story continues. We gathered all the evidence and filed a complaint with the police. The police acted promptly, and my mother-in-law was arrested. We intend to ensure she faces the consequences and will not settle out of court. Furthermore, we decided to claim damages. Emma worked closely with our attorney, and we will seek the maximum compensation from my mother-in-law. In the end, my father-in-law, who remained silent during that tense moment with my mother-in-law, presented her with divorce papers. He could no longer sustain a marital life with her, especially after Emma's involvement. Thus, my mother-in-law was faced with a challenging retirement with a criminal record and debts. On our side, a few months later, we safely welcomed a lovely baby. Grandma Emma visited the hospital and even held the baby. Although we anticipate challenging days ahead with work and raising our child, we hope to enjoy our new life together with Steve's cooperation.